Hey everyone, Jonathan Wells here with Local Legends. We are interviewing another amazing real estate agent today.
Hello.
We've got Diana Espinoza here
Yes.
in the house. So we're going to be talking about a lot of different, things, not just about real estate, but also her background as well too. So why don't you introduce yourself to the audience, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. My name's Diana Espinoza. Born and raised in Tucson, Arizona, but now here in Northwest Indiana. I've lived out here for about maybe 3-4 years, back and forth. I've really visited for a long time, maybe 10 years to go back and forth of knowing the Indiana region and Chicagoland as well. Indiana real estate license and Illinois real estate license, and single mom with the 8-year-old. What else do I've got? I think that's all I have off the top of my head for
There
now.
you go.
Yeah.
Huge Kanye defender. No, I'm kidding.
Oh my God, for sure. That's definitely on my
on your list of topics.
it's on my I'm definitely a Kanye defender. But the last thing he came out with, I was like, Kanye.
Yeah, it's getting tougher.
It's really hard to defend you. It's really hard.
You're making it hard.
Yeah, I think that a lot of the reason why I do that with his personality type too is just because I can relate a lot.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
In the sense that I do say, like, I sometimes speak without thinking.
Yeah.
Or speak something that not a lot of people are aware of. And I'm like, trying to convince the world of whatever it is,
Right.
And I think that's where I can appreciate a lot of authenticity from people. So people like problematic people, I'm not trying to say like, oh, I love them, but it's like, those are the people that what you see is what you get with those people.
Right.
And I would rather that than the alternative.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Totally respect that. And I think we all, sometimes say things before, we think about them, right?
For
I think
sure.
everybody does that. So yeah, no, I totally relate.
Yeah,
sure. So,
absolutely.
Good deal. Well, yeah, tell us about your background. I know that, we were touching on a few things that, make you yourself, right? And like define your success. So why don't we get into some of that?
So, I mean, I always love to point out that I am first generation American.
Mm-hmm.
That means that my parents immigrated from Mexico. So they came on student and temporary visas.
Sure.
And I was born here. So I am a citizen. I feel like I have to point that out sometimes.
Yeah, she's eligible to run for president.
I am eligible to run for president.
There you go.
So that's a big defining factor for me. Mm-hmm. And I say that only because I do know, even if it's not Mexican, even if it's Irish, Italian, any other first generation American, we encounter so many barriers.
Sure.
That I would say that not a lot of natural Americans who have been here and have generational wealth and things like that. So being said, I registered myself for school because sometimes my parents didn't have the time to really take me to like school registration or sign my permission slips, or sometimes they needed me to translate something. My mom and dad do speak very well English, I'll say that. But, sometimes a language barrier you sometimes don't understand. And because English was my first language, I did, I had to kind of be that also, like the mediator, I guess we'll say. Mm-hmm. So with that in me, I always told myself that I'm going to build that American dream that we see over here in America, that there's not a lot of opportunity for in other countries. Mm-hmm. We do have a lot of freedom of speech, I would say. In other countries, you say something, you can say whatever you want to say, but there's a lot of repercussions to that. And now we're seeing in this country that, yes, you have repercussions, but you also have people that are able to say those things and back you up as well.
Right, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot of the repercussions we have in America are socially, right?
Yeah.
Like you can say whatever you want, but, at a certain extent, you may lose credibility rather quickly. And then especially if you run a business, or, if you're, even like Kanye, for example, right? Like you can lose social credibility pretty quickly just based on the things that you say, right?
Absolutely.
And so, yeah, I definitely agree with you on that.
Yeah. And then I think that's really about me, my background. Again, born and raised in Arizona. So I like to say I'm an outsider looking in when I come and do business here in Northwest Indiana and in Illinois, because I don't have those positioned, what would I say? Like, I think I would call them biases.
Yeah, for sure.
Biases on like, oh, because I do see like Chicago people, they're so proud about being like from Chicago. Right. And I love that for them. And I see it. And I could see why. There's so much culture, there's so much diversity. Mm-hmm. Indiana people, it's so different. It's just like, it's crazy how close we are, but we're so different.
Oh yeah,
even in how we do business. Mm-hmm. And how we communicate to each other. I've had Illinois clients close in Indiana, and it was always never good. It's always never good, only because of the way things are practiced in Indiana or in Illinois versus Indiana. So yeah, me having that outside bias of being like, I don't care, I like wherever you like,
right, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so I think that's like all I have for that.
Yeah, no, I would say, like, to add a little bit on that, it's almost like, because I've been practicing for a while, and I do stuff in the city, in the south suburbs, western suburbs, and then even obviously in Indiana too.
Right.
Indiana, it's kind of more, from a client perspective, I would say more like libertarian. Everyone's like, hey, like, I just want to do my own thing, and then like I don't really want to deal with anybody else. So you'll notice now with new construction, everything, they have a lot more HOAs. Mm-hmm. But HOA fees are a fraction of what they are in Illinois.
Oh, yeah, the same they're services. Nothing. Yeah.
And so that's, I think that kind of comes from the territory of Indiana, Hoosiers or whatever. They don't really want to be, involved in a lot of stuff like that. They don't want to be paying a lot of extra money for things of that nature. And you obviously see a lot more rural properties out this way as well.
Right.
And then like from the industry perspective, it's, I feel like Northwest Indiana is more of almost like a large extended family kind of a deal.
Right.
Because you have, yes, you're going to have some people that are more like cliquey with whoever groups that they're in. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, like, we all will come together and collaborate when we need to.
Right.
Versus, in the city, it's more of just financial, like, okay, how quickly can we get this done? Like, I feel like it's a lot more faster paced.
Very.
In the city. And then in the suburbs, it's probably a little bit more cliquey, almost like sometimes it feels almost like mafia type vibes sometimes.
I think I can see that too.
And so, because like this person knows this person, which knows this person, and they're the ones going to get it done. And like everyone's got a guy for something,
right?
So yeah, it's just my observation of kind of how.
And even in every business, like because I worked in restaurant business as well in Illinois and in Indiana, it's done so differently. What might sell in Illinois, even though we're like 5-10 minutes away, on the border, will not sell in Indiana. Right. And it's crazy to think that like that concept is there. It's such a huge divide.
Yeah.
And it's okay. Like, it's okay too. It's not like a negative thing to say, but because diversity is great when whatever that looks like. But when you can determine that difference without having those biases, I think that kind of, for me, that worked in my favor in my business as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So what are like your biggest passions right now? I know you have like a few different things that you really like that. No, I wouldn't say define you, right? But like really shape who you are. Right.
Yeah.
So what are those things? And let's just start there.
Yeah. So, I mean, I am big in health and fitness, and mental health, of course. That's one big thing that I would say is very defining about me when people think about, or my friends think about me, or they kind of describe me. They're like, oh, she's at the gym. She's always preaching, like, do good by people and they'll do good by you. That's like, number one. I would say another thing in my business, I'm very passionate, and I think in general. Yeah. And I think, I don't know, I mean, marketing has always been my like driving thing, where I feel like I can do I think the reason why I like marketing so much is because I feel like I'm doing every job all at once.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
For sure.
And I've never been the person like growing up, like when I envisioned what I wanted to be when I grow up as a kid, I always was like, oh, I want to do this, but then after that, I want to do that, and then I want to do this. It was never just one thing.
Right. Yeah.
And I feel like we were told that as a kid to like, you need to focus on one thing. and that's your career, and you got to love it, and this and that and blah, blah, blah. I never could just focus on one thing. I don't know what it is.
Oh,
There's so many awesome things out there that I'm like, that's cool, but that's cool too. Like, I'm starting to get into hobbies that I never thought that I would, like my best friend's into Formula 1 racing, and I'm like, that's pretty cool. Like, well, hey, I can learn more about different things all at once.
Yeah. No, absolutely. It's funny you brought up Formula 1 racing. I was out with someone I'm working with to develop a business relationship, and we were out golfing, and he was talking about like F1 racing and everything. And I was like, yeah, like I've seen it, but I haven't really like watched it. Like that might be a new sport for me to pick up.
It's actually pretty cool.
Yeah.
Like when you think about the concept of like the cars and the racers and how fast they're going like over maybe sometimes 200 miles per hour on a track.
Have you seen those videos? So like, Tyreek Hill is, right?
No.
Okay, he's the wide receiver for the Dolphins. He was on the Chiefs like when he got drafted.
I should know these things.
He does like a lot of collaborations with like different content creators and everything.
Okay.
If I showed you a picture, you probably know who he is. So they were testing like reaction times between like, the best NFL wide receiver arguably in the league right now, who's like one of the fastest men alive, versus an F1 racer. And so they like had like, that test where you hold the balls up and you drop it and you have to like figure out, you have to grab the ball or whatever.
Oh.
So, Tyreek grabs it like about halfway down before it drops. The F1 racer is holding his hands out and like just grabs it like within like, it was like milliseconds.
Wow.
Like that's how fast your reaction time has to be as an F1 racer because of how fast you're going on that track.
That's insane. See, that's cool.
That is, like just for that alone, I'm like mad respect for
sure
for F1 racing. Absolutely.
And it's beautiful. It's a great sport, and I don't know. Anyways,
definitely. Well, so I feel like this is another thing too, right? Like there's the people that I bring on the podcast are people that I really have some kind of a connection with. I feel like even if we've only talked a handful of times, it's because I think that we both see a little bit of each other's personality, right? Mm-hmm. And so one of those things that like I see you showcase a lot through your content, through how you talk and everything else, is the passion that you have for the business, right?
Yeah.
Like for myself, like people get emails from me at 1 or 2 a.m. because that like I'm that passionate about it that I'm gonna be getting things done regardless, and I want to make things happen, right?
Yeah.
And I know that you're the same way. So how did you cultivate that passion for the business? And I know you mentioned also that you you kind of like jumping from different things.
Yeah.
But is that just a trait of who you are as a person, or was it like just something about real estate that really excited you about it?
I think it's just who I am as a person.
Yeah.
Because I've noticed like when I'm good at something, I'm like, oh, I'm good at this. And then I really dive into it. Mm-hmm. And I get like really into concept scripts, like how can I be better, how can I make sure that I'm gaining more business. I've always known that I've been good at sales, and so the reason why I even got into real estate was because I'm like, hey, I have a skill, I'm good at sales, not a lot of people are. Where can I elevate myself to a point where I can really say that I sold something big and be proud of that too? And that was real estate. So as I'm doing my business and as I'm, real estate is not just selling houses a lot of the times too, as you would know, it's a lot more than that. And it can be something as simple as, it's somebody's first time buying a house. It can be someone's fifth time buying a house. It could be, but it's so emotional. There's so much behind real estate.
Right.
So with that, I think my ability to connect with people and my ability to be able to see their vision for them as well and connect them to whatever it is that they're looking, that they want to find for their home, for their commercial space, for whatever that looks like. That's just for me, like, I don't know, it fills a void. And that's where I'm say like where my passion comes from. I'm like, I made somebody else happy in this moment. I'm happy.
Right. Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I can definitely relate to that too. I think a lot of people, can as well. And I think that like, I don't necessarily know if there's like a lot of necessarily just unpassionate people.
Yeah.
But if, anyone watching this, like my challenge is like, just live with that passion, whatever you're doing, right? You don't have to be selling real estate. You don't have to be, owning your own business. You could be the best at whatever it is that you're doing. Right. If it's washing cars or if it's whatever it is, right? Like fill in the blank. Like that's one thing that looking back, like I really have can say that I've been that way my entire life, especially my working career.
Yeah.
Whatever I'm doing, I'm like, I love this. I want to be the best at this, and then just make it happen. Right.
Right. And have you
like you're the
ever,
same way.
so yeah. And have you ever noticed that like while you're doing all your business and while you're seeing all your passion, you're like getting to know yourself a lot more. You're like, wow, like I didn't know that I was even capable of doing all of this, or I didn't know that I was capable of even exhausting myself even that far, and like, you know, putting too many files on my hands, or capable of doing or learning myself so well, like how I'm able to. Do you ever surprise yourself? I guess that's the question.
So, I mean, I would say like there are definitely times where where I surprise myself, but it's almost the fact that like, you know, I'm like, okay, like I kind of feel like I expected this to happen too, you know? So I'll give you an example. So like last month, right? Last week, but like right before the end of the month. We're closing out the month. I'm looking at our current referrals, and we have a referral tracker that we use for our team. So we're at like 47, you know, leads for the month or whatever. And I made a post. I was like, hey, like we've got, you know, 2 days left in the month. We need 4 leads to break 50 for the month and have our best lead month in like 2 years, right? So I made a post about it. I started calling through the rest of the agents that I needed to talk to for that week. I'm like, hey, by the way, like if you know anybody, they could be credit repair, they could be whatever. Like just give me names, right? That's all I need, right?
Nice, yeah.
And so, you know, adding value, asking for the referral there. And then I made another post on my Facebook story, and I actually had somebody reply to that, and I got the 2 leads from the Facebook story. Right.
Nice. Yeah.
And so we ended up like we crossed over the month with 50 leads exactly. And so that's where, you know, like, and then I looked at my pipeline, and we got like 3 contracts in that weekend. So now we're sitting at like 14 active loans in the pipeline. Plus we have, you know,
Wow.
or 14 that are slated for June.
Yeah.
We had like, I think we had like 16 because we have a couple for July. But, you know, all these loans in the pipeline, all these leads coming in that we're still working on.
Yeah. Wow.
And I'm looking at this like, okay, like I love this. This is, you know, exciting.
That
and
is
like
exciting. Yeah.
it is something where I'm like, okay, I kind of like I am surprised a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
but also in the back of my mind, I'm like, yeah, you've been saying that you were going to get there for the last year and a half, and now you finally got there, right?
Oh,
Or not,
yeah.
not that you finally got there, right? Because I'll never feel like I've arrived,
Right.
but like, okay, you actually did what you said you were going to do, and like now, like keep doing it, right?
Right.
So it's almost like this, like self-talk of like, you know, yeah, like almost like a parental figure you can't really like please or whatever. Like that's kind of how I am in my own mind a lot of times, where it's like, okay, like, yeah, you did it. Now do it again. Right. And so that's just how that's how I always feel about myself, is, you know, kind of like, and again, like it's this love-hate relationship. Right. Mm-hmm. But having those thoughts of, okay, like, yes, I did it. Great. Let's celebrate for 2 seconds. And then now back to the grindstone. Let's make it happen. You know?
I can relate a lot with that. And you're there and you're just like, but I did it. And then your back of your mind's like, yeah, but now you know you can do better.
Right, exactly.
Now you know next month is going to be better.
Yeah, the goalpost has moved.
Yeah. Or if you don't do anything now, you're not going to get it again.
Exactly. That's the biggest one. Because like I'm sure there's been times in your career, it might not be real estate, it might be something different.
Yeah.
Where you've hit like this peak of where you're like, okay, like I was in, you know, maybe it's, I was in the best shape of my life, or I was making the most amount of money I ever made, or whatever it was. And then something happens, and it could be the market, it could be like whatever, right? And then now you start to fall off of what your highest level was.
Right.
And then you start to doubt yourself, and you're like, okay, like, can I even get back to that? Right. And so that's something that, you know, I feel like a lot of real estate professionals have probably struggled with, that were in the business before COVID, had a nice run during COVID. And then, you know, after that, almost everything dried up, you know?
Oh my God, I couldn't imagine. Yeah. I could also imagine how much they were making during COVID.
For sure. Yeah, for sure. I mean, if you were a real estate professional with a, like, you actually had a book of business, and you knew how to market it effectively, you were doing really well during those times. And then it all dried up like that.
Yeah.
And then you just, you know, basically you just had to either work harder or make less, right?
Right.
And a lot of people like myself did both. I'm like, I'm working harder and I'm getting paid less. This is great. Love it.
Dang.
Yeah, exactly. So
that's crazy. But yeah, no, I do relate a lot with that. Yeah. With that concept of like, I need to either work harder or do better, or always just constantly chasing myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that like you're somebody that I've really looked up to on the social media side of things.
Oh,
right?
Thank you. Yeah.
From the content that you put out to like the tips that you give, everything else. And I think that, I don't know much about your start in real estate, if you were like pounding the phones a ton, or like making a lot of cold calls or whatever it is. But like for me, coming from my background of, I was making, 30 to 40 outbound calls a day, to switching to social media from like not all of my marketing, right?
Yeah.
But a big portion of it. I think that like, how do you explain to somebody who's been that cold caller, dialer person, or even somebody who's brand new to the business, right?
Right.
How do you explain, okay, you still need to make some calls and you still need to have these conversations, because you're never going to replace that. But leverage social media to help elevate those calls so that you can actually be more effective with your time.
Right. And it's confirming what you do when you're talking on the phone too. And most importantly, what you put out on social media needs to 100% reflect who you are in real life.
Yeah.
And that's where I think that I trusted, or I gained the trust of my viewers. And so to explain that to somebody who's newer in business, who has never worked a sales job and doesn't know kind of how to start. I did start cold calling. I did. Yeah. And I'm great at it. I really am. Put a script in front of me and I'll follow it, or whatever it is. If I know what I'm talking about, I'm rolling off the tongue. So cold calling did do very well for me. Everything as far as like old school traditional marketing, always still do that.
Yeah.
But reinforcing everything that you're putting out there on social media is what's going to make people feel more like they trust you, more personable.
Right.
We can put this on a bigger scale of like talking like about someone like Kim Kardashian.
Sure.
She, gained her fame on her reality TV show, but that also
probably a little bit before that.
But we're going to keep it PG. Exactly. So on that, with that, there's a reinforcement on her social media. So I think Kylie Jenner was the first most paid celebrity on social media on Instagram, right? Or something like that.
I think you're right about that. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's because who she was also on this show transpired on social media, and brands would notice, okay, people are watching her. Yeah. People are seeing what she's doing. So we're going to we're not taking away from who Kylie is. Right. We're going to add to her by throwing a Gucci purse on her, whatever it is. Yeah. So when you think about it on that large scale, a lot of people are like, well, I can't do that. I'm not going to get brand deals. Right. No, I mean, your brand is you.
Right. Yeah.
Your brand is you. So show that on social media. Show who you are. Show how much of a go-getter you are. Show how much you are willing to go above and beyond for clients. I love seeing when agents show that. When they say, look, I did this, I did that. I know sometimes I make some posts that are a little problematic.
You want to talk about problematic posts? I made one yesterday.
Did you?
You didn't see it?
No.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll talk about that in a second.
I didn't see it. But my post one time was about, and I'm going to talk, I got really passionate about this because it's not just about real estate. It's about the working class. And, I grew up very poor. Yeah. I grew up in a trailer home. So I can see where the effects of what people may think, oh, it's nothing. Like real estate agents can sometimes be desensitized. Thank you. English is
it's all good. It's all good.
Desensitized to Jesus Christ, I can't say it. But anyways,
it's all good. I only know that because there's a song by Bobby Raps. But anyways,
I love that. Thank you. To what working a 9-to-5 job is and how important it is to show up to your job. So I had a client that we had already, closing date was already on the contract.
Yep.
Okay. And she and the listing agent just completely dismissed that and said, no, we have to do it. And this was like days before closing. Yeah. 2 days before closing. She said, no, it has to be next week.
I think I remember seeing something like that on your Facebook post.
Yeah. And I was like, well, my clients asked for this day off. It's been a month.
Right. Yeah. We're now almost 30 days into the deal.
Yeah. Yeah. My client asked for this day off. He's also, he's a chef. So him taking time off is
a huge deal.
It's a huge deal. And he's like one of the ones that are like making the menu.
Yeah. Like a sous chef or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. So I was just like, no, I'm not doing that. And I really went off on the whole, like,
Yeah.
do you understand, like, why this is important, why we should follow the contract? And
Right.
if you're not going to follow the contract, like, you should have spoken to me about this before.
Right. Exactly.
Way before. This should have been a week at least in advance for my client to adjust.
Yeah.
So, anyways, back to that, you know, I was able to show through my conversation and also show to my social media that
Sure.
I'm going to represent you. And even if it puts me in a little bit of hot fire,
Yeah.
I'm going to stand by you because you're my client. And I
Yeah.
know that it's important. Like, this was a first time home buyer.
Yeah.
I'm not going to traumatize him from, you know, from buying a house.
Yeah, exactly.
Or, you know, make him feel like, man, this isn't for me.
Yeah.
I feel like that happens a lot with first time home buyers. You're like, oh, this isn't for me then.
Right.
And
No,
it's
exactly.
like, no, it's not. It is for you.
It is. Yeah. I definitely agree, right? Like, especially with the first time home buyers, if they experience a lot of challenges in the process,
right,
then they will, they're more likely to give up, right?
Yeah.
And then, they're like, oh yeah, like you said, it's just not for me, right? And then they're going to rent for their whole life.
Yeah.
And if you rent for your whole life, like I've dealt with, I've seen loan applications come through.
Yeah.
And, it's sad when you see somebody who's in their 60s and all they have is the $1,400 a month they're making in Social Security. They have no hard assets. They don't own their place.
Yeah.
They're stuck renting, pardon my French, with a shitty apartment for $800 a month. And they've got $600 left to live on unless they have a part-time job or they work for cash somewhere.
Right.
And like, that's completely avoidable through things that you can do through like investing in your retirement accounts, investing in whatever.
Right.
But one of the biggest investments, and it's the cliche thing to say, but it is real estate.
Yeah.
Like, there's been, I've had clients that have made hundreds of thousands of dollars on their real estate, on just their primary home that they bought when I first got in the business 7 years ago.
Right.
Right. And so that's another reason why I think leads to both of our passions on that. Is that we see the difference we can make in somebody's life.
Absolutely.
And it's almost like I'm sure that to certain people in the industry that you've probably dealt with or that I've dealt with, we probably have that like gunslinger reputation of the fact that like, no, like this is what the contract says. We're going to do this. Yeah. And, they're probably like, oh, like these are, kids that don't know what they're doing. Right. Or like whatever.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
And it's like, no, like, we actually are doing more than you are because we're ready and you're not.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so there's been times where like I've gotten into fights with multiple different title companies. I won't mention names.
I'm sure.
But like on different like things that we either need or we don't need on the title commitment.
Right.
And then, hey, like, or listing agents saying, oh yeah, well, like we didn't order the payoff, so now we have to delay closing. I'm like, great. Well, like on the contract, you're paying my client, $200 a day or whatever it is. I'm like, great. Like if we, obviously there's certain things you just can't get over. Like, you can't close without, the payoffs.
Right.
But like that's going to come at a cost because you had 45 days to get this done.
True.
And you didn't do it.
True. So, very true. My goodness. Snaps to that because goodness gracious. I know I've dealt with a couple title companies that they just didn't even, they wrote, oh my God. I was like, what do you mean you have the name written wrong?
Yeah.
On all the documents except for the actual title document.
Jeez.
Which made no sense.
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense.
I was like, what are you guys? And then blames me. Yeah. Blames me. And I was like, what?
Yeah.
Title needs to do better.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, I think, and it's a hard industry too, right? Like there's, I think any industry is difficult, right? But yeah, so going back to the controversial posts, right?
Yeah.
So here's another thing, right? If you are, a business owner or, real estate agent, whatever you want, whoever you are that's watching this, I personally feel like this can back me up here or tell me I'm wrong, whatever. I think that there is a lot of value in being controversial without being like an asshole, right?
Absolutely.
Especially when you're posting content on social media and you're building your brand because, you're going to weed out a lot of people that weren't going to buy from you anyways, right? Or work with you or whatever. And then you're going to gain more support from the people that you already work with. And then you're probably also going to add a few people that are like, hey, this person, like I can relate to what they're saying and they're saying what everyone's thinking. Right. So to give you an example of like, so the post that I made yesterday, because this is being recorded on Thursday and I made the post on Wednesday.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's how days work. So, okay. Buddy of mine really great dude, lender out of Tennessee. Okay. Right. He's a coach in the program that I'm in. And I've known him for like 5 years before then. So he made a post saying like his like hot take for the week was that real estate agents in general are like, there's not as much regulation compared to other industries.
Oh, right? I think I remember seeing that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So compared to plumbers, compared to hairdressers, things of that nature. So his question to his audience, which were like real estate agents in Nashville, Tennessee, was, do you think that we have enough regulation now? If so, or like if not, what could we be doing and what would that look like? Right.
Yeah.
Which is an interesting thing to think about. Right. Yeah. Because I'll be honest, like I don't know if like regulation is the next thing we need to be doing for real estate agents right now because of everything that just happened.
Right.
And that's all. And I know, and I totally understand it's a sensitive topic. Right. But it's a good conversation to have. And I think that, we should always be having conversations like this about our prospective industries. Right. So I posed, and I used ChatGPT to help craft the post as I do with all my posts, right? Because I'm like, hey, make sure this sounds good. Make sure that I'm not like, whatever, right?
Yeah.
So I'm putting this together and I read the post like 2 or 3 times. I edited it a few times before I posted it. And I was like, okay, like I'm reading this. I know what my intentions are, which is simply saying, hey, this is a post. Here's the summary of the post that I saw from somebody else.
Yeah.
I want like, it kind of does bring up a good question.
Yeah.
What do you guys think about it? Let me know, right? And I'd love to hear from my audience because I want to spark some engagement, right? And I want to get my profile boosted up a little bit, right?
No, I mean, I think you did a good job. You had a lot of comments on that one.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. There's like this comments are so popping off right now.
Really, that's
people
good.
Are going after each other. It's kind of crazy.
I honestly thought I was gonna put something on the comments too, but I was like, let me think about that one for a little bit because I remember seeing that.
Yeah,
I do remember seeing that, and I was like, it's like yes, but that's like me being petty.
Right. So I think that like the overwhelming majority of people that commented on the post were basically saying like, yeah, like it is a good, thought, like it's a good question that we should think about, right? Because at the end of the day, like I don't necessarily think that more regulation would actually change the public's perception of real estate agents, right?
That makes sense.
Because all like, and again, like I'm not the big, regulation guy either, right? Like I like being able to do things in my wheelhouse, right? And to a certain extent, some regulations will prevent people from being able to do things that they're supposed to do for their clients, for sure, right? And I, certainly don't want to discourage any brand new agent from being able to break into the industry and make a career for themselves. We all were brand new at one time, and we all have goals and aspirations, and people should be allowed to do that. But the overwhelming amount of comments were supportive of the post itself, right? And then, I think I had like, 2-3 people that had commented on it that it was some sort of a negative comment. And then like one person, like I know people that are affiliated with this person and they're all chiming in now too. And then I actually got a call from a 4th person that asked me to take it down, like within 30 minutes of me posting it.
No way.
And I'm like, listen, I'm like, 1, like, that's not who I am, number 1.
Yeah.
Number 2, like, I know this person, like, we used to work together, but we don't work together anymore. And there's other reasons why we don't work together anymore.
Yeah.
And I'm like, hey, like, I respect you. Like, I wish you all the best. But like, even if I was that person to take a post down because somebody that I worked with told me to take it down, we don't work together anymore. Yeah. So like, what authority do you think that you have to tell me to take this down?
Yeah, respectfully, no.
Exactly.
Like, what the fuck?
And so like, it's, and the goal was engagement, right? Which we got a lot of.
We got it. So that's
we got
good.
It, right?
Yeah.
And so, I made a follow-up today to that same post, kind of just re-clarifying the intentions of everything.
Okay.
And also saying like, hey, like, I think if it made you think about, like what you're doing as a real estate agent, and then I think it was successful. And if it struck a nerve, like that's okay too, right?
That's better, actually.
Exactly. Yeah, 100%. And so I know that there are people that are not going to like me going forward. But again, those people that don't like me, I wasn't working with anyways.
Yeah.
Right? And now, my profile is going to be boosted way more next week because of all the interaction that I've gotten this week from that post.
And then those people that don't like you are probably like, watch what this asshole guy posted.
Exactly.
Boom, you get another engagement or view, whatever that looks like.
Exactly.
It's like, We love the haters too.
Exactly.
We love them.
And there was a creator that I was looking at, or I was watching some of his videos yesterday, and he had that exact same point. He was like, please keep bringing the hate, because like all it does is just boost my profile to other people that I actually want to have engaging on this.
That someone might end up like, you know, if just because I like, let's just say I disagree, just because I disagree doesn't mean my friend's not going to.
Exactly.
You know, like
right. Exactly. And guess what? You're allowed to disagree with people's opinions, right?
Better.
I'm not saying like, you know, I'm not saying on this post, you know, real estate agents shouldn't make any money and you shouldn't be allowed to start a real estate career.
Right.
And you should be closing 50 deals or more as a real estate agent or get the fuck out of the business. Right. I didn't say that.
Yeah.
That was not the intention of the post.
Yeah.
So anyways.
That would be very crazy. 50 deals a year or a month or a year in general. It's just like, what?
Yeah. And then I keep like, you know, kept replying to people. At a certain point, I'm like, okay, there's too many comments for me to really just like reply to all these. I'm busy. I gotta get shit done. But I was like, you know, I didn't make the post either. Yeah. Like, I'm just saying, hey, this is what I saw. What are your thoughts?
What do you guys think?
What do you guys think? Like, I'm not the one that has that opinion.
Yeah.
So
you didn't post your opinion?
My opinion is, I'll give you my opinion.
Yeah,
I did actually reply to a few different people, and it's probably lost in the comments, but I did post my personal opinion on things. So my opinion is, I don't know what more regulation would look like to help like with what the original poster was thinking about, right? So my thought is, okay, I've got friends that are not in real estate. Mm-hmm. And every friend that I have that's not in real estate, they think that, you know, real estate is basically used cars, right? Mm. Which to a certain extent, like I totally understand why people would think that.
I could see that, yeah.
And the other thing that I'm aware of too, because I see both sides, is that there's the bottom, I wouldn't even say the bottom 20%, I'd probably say the bottom 5 to 10% of ethics for real estate agents.
Right.
They are the ones responsible for the vast majority of what the public believes about real estate agents.
True.
Right. So I don't know how you can regulate those 5 to 10% of agents to bring in or to elevate the public perception and get rid of the negative stereotypes about real estate agents.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
No,
right?
Yeah. That bottles down to the agent themselves.
Exactly. Yeah. And so what I think, and you know, one, I don't know how you could really do that, but also even if you are able to do that, I think that it might still not be the right decision to make from a regulation standpoint. Right. I think that it really actually gives a unique opportunity to different brokerages to say, hey, like, this is our brand. We're going to have these types of agents that work here. And this is going to be who we are. Right. So one thing that, like, you know, this is my prediction. You'll see this.
Right.
Going forward, like, I'm developing my branch right now.
Right.
I just hired in 2 people. We talked about that before. I'm going to start hiring in a few more people, you know, in the next few months, because we're blowing up with, you know, business that's coming in, referrals, everything else. Right. Since I'm not hiring out of desperation, I only want top talent.
Right.
I don't want, like, if you have drama, you're not going to work here.
Right.
If you have,
hold on, what do you mean by drama?
Well, okay, like, exactly. Like, if you have, like, yeah, like, so my thing is, if you, like, you can have whatever is going on in your life.
Yeah.
But it stops at the door. Right?
Okay. So, like, in the office.
Right. Like, don't take, like, okay, you don't like this person? Great. You don't need to express that.
Yeah.
You know, or
like this is not selling sunset.
Exactly. 100%. Like, to boil it down, like, my philosophy, and this is like my dream life, is wake up in the morning, work out, hit work really hard.
Yeah.
Right. Put my hours in, make my phone calls, and at the end of the day, drink a beer. Like, that's literally it. Right.
Really?
Like, I'm not going to drink a beer every day. Right.
Okay,
but like, but you know what I mean? Like, my thing is, like, go hard in the paint, do what you're supposed to do, and then have a little celebration afterwards. Right. Like, that's my day. Like, that's what I want to be. Right. And I want to be around people that are of the same mindset. I want to attract that talent.
Right.
So going back to this, I think that, you know, I think that with everything that's going on in the real estate industry as a whole, managing brokers and different brokerages have that unique opportunity to say, well, we're just going to make sure that our agents are the best and that we have the best public perception as a brokerage.
Yeah.
And that alone is going to help them continually recruit more agents.
Absolutely.
And have that better public perception, get more home buyers and everything else. And you can really only do that, I feel like, with those like boutique brokerages or even the franchises.
I was just going to say that. Yeah.
Nationally, it's more difficult to do.
Right.
But real estate has never, I feel like real estate's always been like that hyper local brand, right?
Right.
And so like, yeah, you have the big national companies that we all know about. But I really still think that it's just that local agent and that local brokerage that has the technology that can do what they're supposed to do, that those are the ones that are crushing it.
Yeah.
And they should be.
Yeah, I agree. I actually have seen that. And they're very selective. There's a brokerage in Illinois. They're very, very selective on who they put on their team.
Yeah.
And I love everything that they put out, everything that they do, everything that they stand for. If they had an Indiana branch, believe me, I mean, I know this might be a little sorry, but
I feel like Adam Schefter right now.
Right? Like but no, yeah, like
trade deadline's next week, so you gotta
Rut-row.
Yeah.
But yeah, that being said, I've seen that, and I do like, I believe in those type of boutique small franchises that really don't really care about the. I mean, I don't want to say they don't care about the big picture. They do care about the big picture,
right.
But they're not like, I'm going to conquer all of America. And
right.
That's scary for me. That is.
Yeah, and I think that, to like at a certain extent, right? When does business get too big?
Right.
And that's we can talk about that all day long, right? Like I think
for sure
we're both probably on the similar pages there too. And again, I think that like at the end of the day, what is real estate and mortgages? It's helping people buy and sell homes, right? Mm-hmm. And so you're gonna help somebody do that on a local level, for the most part on the real estate side.
Yeah.
And so you should be, I feel like, hyper local, and your brand should be hyper local, and your company should be hyper local.
Yeah.
Again, not to discourage anybody from working at a larger firm,
right?
But I just think that a lot of times when you start getting into those larger firms, there's a disconnect because you have the mindset of a small business employee from that real estate agent, but then you have the corporate structure of a Fortune 500 company,
right?
And now you've got, I think that those kind of clash a lot.
They do. Yeah. I mean, I know that like, even for myself, I'm going to put it in my perspective, just myself of who I am in my business. I will never turn down business. And I know that that's at a fault sometimes because I'm not a local professional.
Sure.
And so when I learn about new communities, because I'm working within the communities, I do somewhat feel a little like, oh, am I stunting my client a little bit because I'm not 100% like knowing what this neighborhood
I've felt that
offers.
way too about like products and stuff like that. Absolutely. Yeah.
And so it still doesn't stop me from doing business. I still do my research. I still do my thing, but I could see that for other agents, how that can take them, because I have a mindset of where I'm going to research for my client,
absolutely.
But for other agents that are just like, I don't know what I'm doing, or newer agents, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what to do. I don't know which direction to go. That can really put a bad taste on the client's mouth. And then back to where we're going with agents just work with people because it's just a paycheck, and it's not that.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And I think that like, one, to make this completely clear, I don't think that the vast majority of real estate agents are literally just in it for the paycheck. Right.
Yeah.
Like I do know that the vast majority of real estate agents do have a passion for what they do.
All of them.
And a
lot of them.
Yeah, exactly. Right. I mean, there's always going to be one or two. Right.
Yeah.
And again, this is like discounting the 5% that don't have great ethics. Right. Because there's that in every industry. Mm-hmm. Every industry has those people that are in it for the money only and are in it for whatever. Right.
Yeah.
But yes, the vast majority of agents, they are doing their best. They're researching, like you said, they're taking care of their clients, they're making things happen, etc. Also, to your point as well, like there are products that I offer at Leader One that I don't do very often. Mm-hmm. And so that would be similar to you selling in a market that you haven't been to, maybe ever, right? Like we were talking about Crystal Lake when you walked in.
Yeah.
Right? You were over there and you're like, okay, I don't know anything about this market. But one thing that I know about like people like you and people like me is that, like you said, we're going to research, we're going to make sure that we know what we're talking about. And even though we didn't grow up in Crystal Lake, or I didn't, I haven't closed, a reverse mortgage or whatever it is, right? Like whatever the client needs, or a bridge loan, or fill in the blank, right?
Right.
Just because I haven't done one of those loans, if a client that I know reaches out to me and wants information on it, I can absolutely help them get that.
Right.
And same thing for you too.
Yeah.
And I think that, as whether you're a seasoned vet or you're brand new in the business, you should never be scared about the unknowns of a particular transaction. And like you said, dive into it head 1st and figure it out, because that's how everybody lives life, regardless of work and everything.
Right.
Like you don't know something, you go through it and you figure it out.
You figure it out.
That's how everything in life is done.
Yeah. Well, for the go-getters, you would think,
Right.
You would think, but a lot of times people are afraid of the unknown.
Yeah.
And I think that's where, I guess it sets me apart a little bit, is that I'm not afraid of the unknown.
Yeah.
I'm actually excited about the unknown. And
Yeah.
I'm like, I want to know. This actually seems pretty cool.
Yeah.
What's this? What's that? I'm asking so many questions almost always. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is another question I've got for you. So okay, we've both been doing this for a number of years now.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure that like we've both had our fair share of hard conversations we've had to have.
Oh my
clients,
gosh, yeah.
Right. So it's like, it's weird. I'll kind of give you like my like take on this or whatever. Like the first 2 to 3 years of my career, right?
Mm-hmm.
As I'm learning things and things are, I'm starting to work things out, and I'm going from this loan program to this loan program and these different clients and all that stuff. I'm starting to get my feet on everything. And then, there would be a few mistakes here or there, or there would be something that would happen, right? And now I have to have a hard conversation with the client, whether it was my fault, agent's fault, lender or title's fault, whoever, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like my first deal, actually, I don't want to go on a tangent here. First deal, title company screwed something up at the closing table. My client had to bring a check for an additional like $1,000, and I had to be the one to tell them that. So it was even on my first deal that I've started having some hard conversations sometimes, right? So, we're having these at like every time that I'm nervous about like, okay, I need to make this call or whatever. And like now, like I know how this call is going to be received, and like I need to make sure that, I'm handling this delicately.
Yeah.
It's almost like there would be this voice in the back of my head that's like, okay, once you make this call, like the next one's going to be easier. Right.
Oh, wow. Yeah. I've never thought about that.
It's really weird because like, as far as like actual lending issues, like those calls almost never happen anymore.
Yeah.
Obviously the first like year or two of my career, as I'm sure anybody does, like there's been more of those calls as you're learning things. But now that I've got a lot of, experience and everything behind me, it's a little bit different. But still, I got to call one of my borrowers about their appraisal because it came in 30 grand under. Right. Like that's not my fault, but it's also not a great call I want to make. Right.
Yeah.
And their house is already sold. They're already moved out. They're living with mom and dad while they're in the process of buying the new place. Right.
Oh no.
So, but I know that like, okay, like I'm going to make this call and they're going to freak out on the phone because that's how life is.
Mm-hmm.
And, and I get, like, I don't blame them at all. Like I would be freaking out. Like if it was me, like I totally get it. And so, but it always in my mind, I'm like the next call is going to be easier.
Wow.
Right. And it's just like, I feel like that's just something that like I've ingrained in myself, where it's like, it's a muscle that you build, right? Like when you're having those difficult conversations that, okay, yeah, like I've had this kind of a conversation before, like it's not going to be that bad.
You know what? Yeah, I see what you're saying. I think that I practiced that a lot, like that concept, not within my career so much because I feel like a lot of my issues have been really unique.
Sure. Yeah.
I'll tell you one after this.
Yeah. Super unique. After we're done filming.
But I do that. I do that I feel like in my relationships and my friendships.
Got it.
Where if I have to have a hard conversation about maybe a behavior that like my friend's doing, that I'm like, hey, I don't really agree with that. What are you trying to achieve here?
Yeah.
I feel like, it's easier. Like I remember just even thinking about the first time I've ever wanted to tell my closest friend that I just really want her to stop doing what she was doing for herself, just self-sabotaging. We'll say that.
Yeah.
It was so hard for me and just even like she's not going to take this very well. She's not going to like it. And I was like, oh my God, maybe should I even say anything at all? The universe, should I just let her go through her thing, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And then finally, when that conversation was had, now it is a lot easier to have that conversation with her as a reminder, hey, what you doing again?
Right. Yeah.
What's going on? Or even in my relationship where me and my partner, two completely different people, but similar in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Similar in the sense that we're just really driven, positive-minded people.
Yeah.
Very different in the sense that he's well, we're both very stubborn, but he's he's very set in his ways. And
Yeah.
I'm very open to a lot of different concepts.
Yeah.
And for him, it's just like, it's either gray or what is it? Black or white.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
there's no room for gray.
There's no room for gray. For sure. And for me, I'm like, well,
yeah.
So in those, like, where we've had tough conversations, I do feel better after those tough conversations.
Yeah.
Of like, oh, now it's going to be easier to just say like what it is that I'm feeling, without feeling like I'm doing something wrong or whatever that guilt or shame that you feel when you're calling somebody,
Yeah.
On the positive side, I do have a partner that's very receptive to what I say too. So,
yeah.
But yeah, I could see that in my personal life, not so much in my business.
Sure. Yeah, for sure. And I think that like, it's always interesting with like the friends versus relationship dynamics, right?
Yeah.
Like in the relationship, I would expect, because this is how mine is, like it's easier for me to have conversations with like my partner because I'm much closer with them, right?
Right.
Not to say I'm not close with my friends by any means, but like there's sometimes where, I'm not seeing them every single day.
Right.
Right. And so good on you for having that conversation with your friend about, that type of stuff, because it's, just from me knowing, having difficult conversations with my friends in the past and them having difficult conversations with me when I would get a little bit too, on one side. Right. It is a really tough thing to be able to actually have to, to actually do. Right.
Yeah.
And actually have that conversation. So yeah.
Absolutely. But in my business, and I'll like, omit whatever I need to kind of tell the story a little bit. I did have a situation in where the toughest conversation I had with a client was about, this was such a dumpster fire of a transaction. It didn't end up closing at all.
Mm-hmm.
We were set to close. So we submitted the offer maybe like late December, set to close. Middle of January, got pushed back to February, got pushed back to March, got pushed back to April, got pushed back to May. And it was just a lender trying to, it wasn't just the lender. There was a lot of different factors to that. But it came down to the final wire. And this was an Illinois transaction. So we have lawyers involved. The final wire, okay, this is it. And then if we don't get this approved, because it was in conditional approval or whatever, it was an underwriting, sorry. If this doesn't get approved after this last, whatever he did, then this is it. Transaction's done.
Right.
You're not getting a house. My client's homeless at this time.
Right.
Literally homeless. And the lawyer dropped the ball by not sending the final extension on contingency. So when
is the loan approved?
I don't know.
Okay.
Because
so I feel like they could easily go back and fix that.
Right. But
if the loan's approved.
It was so many, the loan's not approved, we need to go back and do something.
Sure, yeah.
It was so many of that, and it was so many, like, nobody was answering phone calls anymore.
Right.
In between the lawyer and the lender. Real estate agents, I'm not saying that I don't do a lot in Illinois, but we don't have a lot of power like how we do in Indiana.
Right, for sure. Yeah.
We don't. It's the lawyers. And so the lawyer not sending that final extension, we were days, just one day. We needed one more day. According to the lender, he said that, yes, we got approved. I don't believe him.
I don't think so either, because if they actually gotten approved, then you would have been able to figure it out.
Yeah.
Because because at that point, what's the listing agent going to do? Are they going to relist this property, or are they going to get the extension signed and actually close in a day?
They did relist it, actually.
Yeah, but I'm saying, if you relist it, now you're back at market, you got to wait for offers to come in, you got to get another one in and close it out. That's a 45, 60-day process.
Right.
Whereas, if you needed an extension for a day and you close within a week, that doesn't, I don't think that passes the sniff test, but yeah.
Right. It was definitely like a lot of people trying to confuse people.
Sure, for sure.
And I by that point I had already desensitized.
There you go, desensitized
myself why do I want to use that word so bad?
I'm going to send it to you as a word of the day tomorrow.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I had already numbed myself to that like transaction that I was like, there's literally nothing I can do. So the client's calling me, do this, do that, do this, do that. And I was like, that hard conversation was, there's nothing I can do.
Right.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
I can't write another amendment. I can't do anything. That's the lawyer's job. And then the lawyer dropped the ball. The lawyer had to end up, we lost the earnest money because the lawyer didn't send that extension. Yeah. The lawyer had to come out of pocket. That client still calls me about the transaction till this day.
Wow.
Till this day. But how I got over that was to tell her, like, you know, I was very transparent and very honest with her.
Yeah.
And I had to, there was points where she, you know, because she's irate. Yeah. She was homeless.
For sure. Yeah. I think anyone that's reasonable would still be irate about that.
Yes.
100%.
Yes. And I had to be well equipped to kind of just say, hey, all right, I understand. No, I really do get where you're coming from.
Yeah.
I'm just not there at that level with you.
Right.
But that doesn't mean I don't understand you.
Right. 100%. Yeah. Absolutely. Well, and at the end of the day too, right? Like we're professionals. This is our job. Right. Mm-hmm. And so, yes, like, you know, I've moved a few times and like when I'm going through the process, I feel the same way my clients do. Right. Because it's my deal. Right. And so there is a certain level of professionalism that you still want to maintain. Right. So you don't want to elevate the situation and get, you know, as like match their energy as being pissed off. Right. But at the same time, to your point, like, hey, just because I'm not irate with you on the phone doesn't mean that I don't care the same, like in a similar way that you do. Right?
Yeah. If not more.
100%. Yeah. Cause it's your reputation. It's your business. It's your, you know, everything. Right. And so, yeah, I think that like, here's one thing that, and again, I might actually pose this as a question next week for some more controversy. Yeah. And I'll let whoever wants to chime in on this one chime in on it. Yeah. So here's another thing, right? Lenders, they're like, yes, there's bad lenders out there. Yeah. 100% by far.
That one was a bad one. And terrible.
I would imagine so. Yeah. And a majority of lenders too, like there's also a lot of just dumb people. Right. Yeah. In the lending industry. Like, and maybe not dumb is the right word. Maybe it's just lazy. I would say that might be a more accurate.
I don't know.
Adjective. Maybe both. Right. Maybe they're dumb and lazy. But like, so you give me an example. Right. There are lenders that if you talk to them, you say, hey, I've got this client. Here's their situation. It's a little bit outside the norm, but I think we can get a deal done. Right. Right. And they say, oh, it doesn't really fit in my box. I can't do it. Right. Yeah. And then you take it to your second lender and the lender's like, yep, I can do it. Let's get it done. Yeah. Right. So and I don't want to put this on real estate agents because the lender is the one that's approving the deal. Right. And it is 100% on the lender every time that this happens. But there are times, or not but, because that's going to negate everything I said before. And there are, like pressures that you get as a lender to close a deal that nobody else can close. Right. Yeah. And so there are times where, and this is like, again, case by case, there's not really a way to regulate this, but lenders should be more conscious of things like this. And if there's a deal that gets put on their desk that is challenging, if your company has the ability to do it, send it to the underwriter before you issue that approval letter. Because now the underwriter can see it, you can review everything, and now you can issue with confidence that that's going to get done. I'll give you the exact scenario that I dealt with. So I had this client call me. Her nephew is the real estate agent, and it's like distant nephew. Nephew and I are like really close. We work together all the time. Nice. He sends me this client in July of last year. I'm driving to my buddy's bachelor party in Nashville, right? Okay. So I'm like, hey, like, you know, like I for sure I can take the call. Like, here's my application link. Figure it. Like, I'm going through the, you know, having that initial conversation with her on the phone. So like, yeah, like, you know, you want to get an approval? Great. Here's my application. Fill it out. Get it back to me. You know, get it done. So I followed up with her like 2 or 3 times after I got back home because I was driving out on a Friday night. So I, you know, followed up a few times over the next couple of weeks. Never heard from this chick again. I get a call from the same buddy who he's like, hey, my aunt's under contract on a house. She had an approval with a different lender and like they're not getting the deal done. Like, we need to get this figured out. Right. I'm like, cool. Pull credit. Look, like she actually finally fills everything out now. Pull credit. Look at this, at all that stuff. And I'm like, okay, well, like her debt to income ratio is not going to work right off the bat because she only makes disability and like Social Security.
Gotcha.
So she's got a large down payment, but she doesn't have any income.
Okay.
So I'm like, and her credit score is like a 596 or whatever.
Oh, wow.
Because, she had some housing lates that rolled into a bankruptcy that she just paid off, right?
Oh, okay.
So just a hot mess, right? So I review the credit report with one of my underwriters, and I'm like, hey, like, I think that we can, like, I don't know if we can get this done or not. Like, here's where, like, I'm looking at the guidelines. This is how I interpret this. Let me know what your thoughts are on how you interpret it, but I don't think we can do this based off of that.
Yeah.
My underwriter's like, hey, I think we can do that actually. Like, but just just submit it so that way we can actually get it done.
Whoa.
So I'm like, okay, cool. So I submit it. And then, the underwriting manager actually was the one that looks at it because of the complications of the file and whatnot. And then we ended up getting the denial, right? So I'm like, okay, but at least I went through this process, and I didn't even take the person's, that said that I could do it. I didn't even take that at face value. I'm still like, I want signed, sealed, and delivered, like from the underwriting department, because if this deal blows back, like I want to know that we had already reviewed this and everything's been stamped.
Right.
And so I think that, to the best of your ability as a loan officer, if you are, you have to be able to manage the expectations for your clients and the agents.
Absolutely.
And if the fear for a loan officer is saying, hey, I don't think that, I don't know if we can get this deal done. Let me send it to underwriting. And it's going to take us 3 or 4 days for that whole process to go through. Right.
Yeah.
And then the fear is that you as the agent will just send it to somebody else that'll get it approved now. Right. And which sometimes happens, right? Like, let's be honest. Sometimes it happens, right? And I get that pressure is there. At the same time, it is your job to make sure, as the loan officer, to set that expectation with your client and your agent, saying, hey, like, you can go get it approved. I'm sure somebody will give you a letter, right?
Yeah.
If you need it right now, I'm sure somebody will give you a letter. I just want to make sure that I don't give you the wrong information, and that it's going to cost you, as the agent, it's going to cost you, money, or not money, but like it's going to cost you from your reputation, right? It's going to be a cost there. And then for your client, it could be a cost of losing their earnest money, paying for inspections, appraisals that they don't need.
Right.
And it just becomes a huge issue.
Right. I mean, and then when we get down to the wire.
Exactly.
Yeah. I agree. That did happen where I had a lender send it straight to underwriting before even anything.
Yeah.
And that was a blessing.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was like, now we know we can all breathe now.
Yeah, exactly. And we've done that on like other deals too. Recently, that again, like, it's just tougher loans, and you're like, yeah, send it in. Like, I want to know that we can meet our contractual obligations before we put anybody's money at risk.
Right.
And like, I just sold my house and I moved in, like, this, like, didn't just do it, but it was like, went under contract. I sold it, got under contract in like September of last year.
Mm-hmm.
And then we closed in January because of like how long that took for that process to close.
Dang.
Yeah, it was not a fun time. But like, coming from that experience,
yeah,
I know what I still feel bad for the sellers too when a deal doesn't go through.
Yeah.
Even if it's not a lending's fault, right? If it's just an inspection or whatever it is, like, these people are set to go move on to the next chapter. Right. Like, I don't want to be the person that's holding them up from that.
Right.
So
nobody does.
Yeah.
Nobody does. We're not playing a role in their life,
Yeah.
But yeah. Absolutely. Crazy stuff in real estate.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, leave us with some final thoughts. Like, what's maybe a piece of advice you've gotten that you really like, or something that you want to share with, everybody that's watching?
I think a big thing that I really do want to point or kind of harp on a little bit to anybody who's watching, who wants to get into the real estate business or just wants to start a business, and wants to find that support, make sure you find your support system. You find the people that you rock with, the people that you can relate with, and also the social media aspect of things, as we talked a lot about, getting getting even just like a controversial opinion out there. There's the fine line of you're getting something out there, but you're also not being an asshole.
Right.
And do what you feel is best for you always. Mm-hmm. And be conscious also. Be conscious of everyone else.
Self-aware. Yes.
Of everyone else and where they could interpret what you do. But most importantly, highlight the great parts of you and project that onto your social media. That's what social media is for. It's to be able to highlight and showcase the good parts of you. Not a lot of people go on there to just say the bad parts. And if they do, they're rocking with the wrong people.
Yep.
So yeah, for anybody who's watching who wants to be more social media forward, or who wants to project a certain concept or talk about a certain thing, do it. Just do it. Just be nice to other people. Do good to other people, and they'll do good to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Be good to yourself. Be good to other people.
Yeah.
Be good to everybody.
Be good to everybody. Be good.
Absolutely.
That's
Be
what
good.
it is.
There
Be
we
good.
go.
Just
Absolutely.
be good. Like
Where can the people find you?
They can find me on Instagram at _ executive Espinoza, or on Facebook, Diana Maria Espinoza, Diana Maria Espinoza Realtor. And I think that's it. Call me, beat me if you want to reach me.
There you go.
Yeah.
Love it. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you for inviting me. I appreciate it.
Anytime.
Yeah.